970 billion in interest, 850 billion for the military. In 2025, America pays more to service its debt than to defend its borders. For the first time in history, debt costs more than defense. Global debt touches $338 trillion, a number so large it loses meaning. Until you see what it did to empires that came before. Spain collapsed with vaults full of silver. Britain fell while controlling a quarter of the planet. The Soviet Union disintegrated, holding 40,000 nuclear warheads. The pattern is identical. The paradox is brutal. Empires don't die because they run out of money. They die the moment people stop believing in it. 4 trillion. Interest rising faster than growth. The noose tightening. The shadow spreading. 3 empires followed this exact sequence. All 3 collapsed. All 3 believed they were exceptions. The question burns. Where is America in the collapse cycle? And is Ferguson's debt warning the signal that breakdown has already begun? Where exactly are we in the sequence? And is it already too late to step back from the edge? 3 empires, 3 centuries, 1 pattern carved into history. Spain in the 1500s, silver flooding from the New World, 200 tons per year. The richest empire on earth, but production rotting from within. Britain in the 1900s, the sun never set on the empire. 25% of the world under 1 flag, but war debts stacking higher than the economy could carry. Soviet Union after 1945, 40,000 nuclear warheads, military power unmatched. But the economy locked in fatal rigidity. Each one believed the same lie. The power once achieved becomes permanent. That debt is just a tool empires use to build greatness. They were wrong. Map the timeline, track the debt-to-GDP ratio. Watch it climb gradually at first. Then the curve bends upward, steeper, sharper, almost vertical, right before the collapse. The line shoots up like a wall. Spain, Britain, Soviet Union. The shape repeats with mechanical precision. And America's curve in 2025, it's tracing that exact trajectory. The line rising, the angle steepening. The pattern emerging from the fog of data like a ghost ship. The mechanism underneath never changed across 500 years. Only the currency names did. Only the faces of power. But here's what the numbers don't show you. Why does the collapse happen when it does? What invisible threshold gets crossed? And once crossed, can it ever be uncrossed? The mechanism that kills empires operates in 3 stages. 3 mistakes repeated across 5 centuries with surgical precision. First, militarization of finance. Empires use debt not to build, but to expand. To project power beyond what the economy can sustain. Second, currency dilution. When the bills come due, they print. They debase. They sacrifice real value to buy time. Third, the production trade-off. Cheap imports flood in. Domestic manufacturing dies slowly. The economic foundation crumbles, while the empire celebrates its wealth. Think of an empire as a trust machine. Debt is the fuel. The machine runs smoothly, as long as people believe the fuel will keep flowing. But overload the engine and physics takes over. The machine doesn't slow down. It explodes. Here's the part that breaks most people's understanding. Debt doesn't kill empires. The killing moment arrives when citizens stop believing the debt will ever be repaid. That's the instant the machine seizes. That's when time runs out. Debt buys years, but it kills the future. Watch how it happened. Spain's silver poured in like a metal river. 200 tons every year at peak. The treasure fleets arrived on schedule. The vaults overflowed. But Spanish merchants made a fatal choice. Instead of building factories, they bought finished goods from France, from England, from the Netherlands. Silver flowed out faster than it flowed in. The productive economy hollowed out while the silver stacked higher. In 1557, Philip II stood before his creditors and spoke the words that shattered an empire. "We cannot pay." Not because the silver ran out. It was still there, still arriving by the ton, but because the currency had lost its anchor to anything real. The metal was abundant. The trust was gone. Britain's empire wrapped around the globe like a steel chain. A quarter of the world's population, a quarter of its land. But 2 world wars snapped that chain link by link. World War I consumed 35% of GDP. World War II added debts that dwarfed the economy. War bonds stacked into mountains of paper obligations. The Treasury kept borrowing because stopping meant losing. In 1931, Britain faced the choice every over-leveraged empire faces: honor the gold standard and collapse immediately, or abandon it and collapse slowly. They chose slowly. The pound broke free from gold. The anchor chain snapped. The currency that had held the global system together for a century began its long drift into irrelevance. The Soviet Union bet everything on one strategy: military dominance through sheer force of spending. 20% of GDP funneled into tanks, missiles, submarines, nuclear warheads. The production of weapons never stopped. Oil revenue propped up the entire system. As long as oil prices stayed high, the machine kept running. Then, in 1985, oil collapsed. The revenue stream dried up overnight. The state couldn't pay wages, couldn't import grain. Store shelves emptied. The ruble, backed by nothing except military strength, lost all credibility in a matter of months. The pattern sharpens into focus. Empires borrow to extend their reach beyond natural limits. The borrowing works. For years, sometimes decades, until the moment the productive base can no longer cover the interest payments. That moment is mathematical, inevitable, irreversible. America is following this sequence with textbook precision. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar broke free from its anchor. Debt immediately began its exponential climb. By 2008, debt crossed 10 trillion. The financial system cracked open. The Fed responded by printing. By 2020, pandemic hit. The Fed printed 6 trillion in months. The printing presses ran without pause. 4 trillion. Deficits run 1 trillion per year built into the structure. Manufacturing continues its 4-decade decline. Bond market confidence shows the first signs of wavering. America is approaching that same killing moment, when the productive economy can no longer service the interest. When printing becomes the only option. When trust begins to fracture at the foundation. The machinery is grinding. The question isn't whether America can avoid the pattern. The pattern is mathematical. The question is, how close to the breaking point are we right now, and what happens when we cross it? The collapse builds in stages. Watch the sequence accelerate. Spain. 200 tons of silver flooding the empire every single year. The metal arrives. The prices explode. Inflation doubles across a generation. A loaf of bread costs twice what it did a decade before. Spanish craftsmen can't compete. Imports are cheaper, better made. The workshops close. The metal workers lose their trades. Silver drains to foreign merchants faster than the treasure fleets can deliver it. Debt mounts, the interest compounds, the credibility cracks. In 1557, Philip II defaults. Spain declares bankruptcy. The empire that owned half the New World cannot pay its bills. The machinery shatters. Britain. World War I burns through 35% of GDP in 4 years. The treasury empties. They borrow. World War II adds another mountain of debt on top of ruins. War bonds stack higher than anyone can count. Sterling, the anchor of global trade for a century, begins to shake. In 1931, Britain makes the choice: gold or survival. They abandon the gold standard. The anchor breaks loose. 0, 80, 27 by the 1980s. Inequality spikes. The working class watches their savings evaporate. Social fractures widen into chasms that never close. Soviet Union. 20% of GDP into military spending. Every year. Tanks, missiles, warheads. The production never stops. Oil revenue holds the system together. High prices. Steady flow. The machine runs. Then in 1985, oil prices collapse. Overnight, revenue vanishes. The state can't pay wages, can't import food. Shelves empty in Moscow, in Leningrad, in every city across 11 time zones. Wages freeze. Trust in the ruble evaporates faster than summer rain on hot asphalt. By 1991, the Union dissolves. 15 republics break away. The superpower disintegrates into fragments. America now mirrors that exact sequence, step by step, year by year. In 1971, Nixon closes the gold window. Debt begins climbing. In the 1980s, deficits widen every year. Factories close. Jobs move to Mexico, to China, to anywhere labor is cheaper. In 2008, the financial system cracks. Debt crosses 10 trillion. The Fed begins quantitative easing. The printing starts. In 2020 pandemic, lockdowns, economic collapse. The Fed prints 6 trillion in months. More money created in weeks than in decades. 4 trillion. Interest payments hit 970 billion per year. Defense spending 850 billion. For the first time in American history, interest exceeds defense. The crossover happens. Manufacturing continues dying. Supply chains stretch across oceans. Semiconductors made in Taiwan. Rare earths refined in China. Pharmaceuticals produced in India. Strategic production sits in foreign hands. Bond yields climb. Long-term treasuries face selling pressure. Foreign central banks slow their purchases. China reduces holdings. Japan reduces holdings. The auctions struggle. Borrowing costs rise. The debt spiral tightens another turn. The engine rattles louder each quarter. Pressure mounts. The gears strain. The system creaks under load. And the question transforms from academic to urgent. When does mounting pressure become irreversible fracture? When does the strain become the break? Every empire hits the same breaking point the moment trust shatters. Spain's silver, once the empire's unshakable strength, melted into worthless alloy. The metal that built an empire became the metal that destroyed it. Creditors refused payment in debased currency. Trade networks collapsed. Silver turned to slag under the heat of inflation. Britain's pound, the anchor of global commerce for centuries, snapped its chain. The currency that held the world together drifted loose, unmoored from value. Sterling lost its gravitational pull. The pound sank into the ocean depths of devaluation. The Soviet ruble, backed only by state military power, plunged into the abyss when oil prices crashed in 1985. Citizens stopped believing in its value overnight. Barter replaced currency on street corners. Money became worthless paper. The sound of glass cracking, money losing its psychological anchor. Currency fracturing under the weight of market pressure. The crack spreads, then it shatters. The insight cuts to bone when trust breaks. Empires cannot hold. That moment is irreversible. Once broken, trust cannot be rebuilt fast enough to prevent collapse. For Spain, the breaking point was in 1557. For Britain in 1931. For the Soviet Union in 1985. For America. The fracture hasn't fully opened yet, but the cracks are visible now. Bond auctions struggle to find buyers. Yields climb higher each quarter. Debt service costs accelerate past GDP growth rates. Foreign central banks slow their treasury purchases. The foundation weakens. The system is approaching its irreversible limit. And limits once breached cannot be unbreached. The machinery doesn't reverse, it only breaks. This is the moment that changes everything. The moment when belief evaporates. When the invisible architecture holding power together becomes visible through its absence. The collapse spreads in waves. Watch how the sequence unfolds. Spain loses the Netherlands in revolt. Portugal breaks away and reclaims independence. The economy contracts for 200 years straight. Silver wealth evaporates into inflation and debt. Spain transforms from global superpower to second-tier power. The empire never recovers its position. Britain loses India in 1947, the jewel of the empire, 27 over decades. Inequality surges across British society. Social cohesion frays at every level. The empire dissolves into Commonwealth fragments scattered across continents. Britain becomes a shadow of its former self. Soviet Union Eastern Europe splits away in 1989. Warsaw Pact dissolves. 15% of GDP vanishes overnight as republics declare independence. 100,000 excess deaths per year from economic shock and social collapse. Society fractures along ethnic and economic lines. The superpower state disintegrates into 15 separate nations. 4 trillion total. Interest payments alone consume $970 billion per year. Defense spending, $850 billion. Interest exceeds defense by $120 billion. The gap widens every quarter. Structural deficit. $1 trillion per year built into the budget. Not cyclical, structural. Dependence on imports grows with each passing year. Bond market trust wavers. Long-term treasury securities sold off by foreign holders. China reduces holdings. Japan reduces holdings. Borrowing costs rise as demand weakens. The auction failures begin small, then larger. Manufacturing weakness deepens. Strategic supply chains sit outside American borders. Semiconductors fabricated in Taiwan. Rare earths processed in China. Pharmaceuticals manufactured in India. Internal economic instability spreads from sector to sector. Job losses accelerate. Communities hollow out. A system accustomed to winning slides off its historical orbit. The mechanism tightens like a mechanical vise. Each domino leans harder on the next. Debt service consumes revenue. Revenue can't cover obligations without more borrowing. New obligations force additional borrowing. More borrowing raises interest costs. Rising costs erode market trust. Trust is the final pillar holding everything up. And when that pillar falls, the entire structure follows in sequence. The pattern repeats with mechanical precision across history. Spain took 200 years to partially recover. Britain never reclaimed its empire status. The Soviet Union never reformed. It simply ceased to exist. America stands at the edge of the same historical sequence. Debt climbing exponentially. Interest accelerating faster than growth. Manufacturing weakening year after year. Trust beginning to crack at the foundation. The dominoes are perfectly aligned, each one higher than the last. The question is no longer if they fall, only when and how fast. Ferguson's pattern clarifies the hidden mechanism. Empires collapse through finance, not geography, not through military defeat, through the mathematics of debt and the psychology of trust. The paradox persists across centuries. Every empire believes it's the exception. Every empire believes the rules don't apply, that their currency is different, that their power is permanent. But finance shows no mercy. Finance operates by mathematical laws that ignore belief. Trust creates power. Trust evaporates and power dissolves with it. The cycle of debt power and mass psychology from Spain to Britain to the Soviet Union now mirrors America in 2025. An America with $850 billion in interest payments, surpassing defense spending for the first time in history. An America with deficits built into the structure. An America watching its manufacturing base continue to erode. The mechanism underneath remains unchanged across 5 centuries. Borrow to expand reach. Dilute currency to sustain spending. Lose productive capacity to cheaper imports. Sacrifice long-term trust for short-term survival. Rome debased its denarius to pay legions. Spain flooded the world with inflation-fueled silver. Britain borrowed beyond the point of recovery to fight 2 world wars. The Soviet Union militarized its economy into fatal brittleness. Each believed the fundamental rules didn't apply to them. Each discovered the rules are absolute. The mathematics of debt compound, regardless of belief. The psychology of trust fractures regardless of military strength. Understanding this mechanism means understanding every financial shock rippling through the global system right now. It means seeing the invisible architecture holding the modern world together and recognizing when that architecture begins to buckle under unsustainable weight. Debt is not inherently destructive. Debt becomes lethal when it outpaces the productive capacity to service it. When interest payments consume revenue that should fund growth. When borrowing transforms from investment into pure survival mechanism. That's the threshold America approaches now. Not theoretical, measurable, observable in the data. The pattern doesn't lie, the numbers don't either. History laid out the map centuries ago. The only question is whether we choose to read it. Behind every number, behind every trillion in debt are people. Spanish farmers losing their land to inflation and taxation. British workers watching their savings evaporate as the pound collapsed. Soviet citizens standing in breadlines as their currency turned worthless. American workers today caught between rising inflation and job loss. Families buried under compounding credit card debt, student debt, mortgage debt. A nation beginning to lose economic direction. The lesson cuts to the bone. Empires exist only as long as people believe in the value of the money in their hands. Only as long as trust holds. History doesn't repeat in exact form. But the sound of breaking trust echoes the same across centuries. The crack, the fracture, the collapse. The mechanics are visible now. The curve is clear in the data. The threshold is measurable. Ferguson's warning is specific, not abstract. What remains is choice. Whether we see the pattern before the break becomes irreversible. Whether we act while the machinery can still be adjusted. Or whether we wait for the glass to shatter before we acknowledge the crack. If the pattern teaches anything across 500 years, it's this. The system holds until it doesn't. And by the time most people realize it's breaking, the break is already complete. The dominoes are already falling. The question facing America isn't whether the pattern applies. The pattern always applies. The question is, where are we in the sequence, and how much time remains before trust fractures beyond repair? Understanding the system means seeing the future before it arrives. That's the only advantage history offers, the only one that matters.